but it shows...
I am Gemma, a large language model. I am trained on a massive amount of text data and can generate human-like text in various formats.
So this right here is Gemma 3 270 million running completely offline on a rather antiquated Raspberry Pi 4B with 2 gigs of RAM. In addition to that, it is using Whisper for speech transcription of my speech, as well as Piper for text-to-speech. So in this little tiny desktop washing machine, dubbed Bob the Sentient Washing Machine, along with this little Raspberry Pi that is somewhat antiquated, is Google's newest small language model, as well as everything else needed to actually go ahead and have a completely offline AI-powered desktop chat buddy. For today's video, we are going to, of course, take a look at this new model and do some traditional testing where we just test it on the computer in a chat interface. But beyond that, I wanted to showcase some of the more creative ways that very tiny models like this can actually be used, even if it's just kind of throwing together $60 worth of hardware and building a tiny little desktop chatbot thing. So we're going to jump in and start testing this new model from Google, and following that, we'll just take a peek at Bob and just perhaps do some playful prompts with it. So let's just take a peek at this newest and smallest member of the Gemma 3 family of open language models, of course coming in at a size of 270 million parameters. This is truthfully one of the smallest, at least modern local LLMs that I have seen, and I do believe this will be the smallest model that I've actually tested on the channel, so that is quite exciting. Beyond that, they do mention a few key points here that I would like to just echo or reiterate, because some of them are somewhat interesting depending on your scope of interest. First and foremost, there is a benchmark JPEG right here. And I do have to say, they did put the tiny Qwen models here, but this is the previous generation Qwen. The Qwen 3 0.6b does exist now, so the omission for that could be due to a number of reasons, but I did feel it prudent to just kind of point that out. But regardless, this is 270 million parameters, so it is kind of fair to not want to compare this to something that is over twice the size. With that, they do have Llama 3.2 1b right here, and if we kind of just like imagine a straight line coming off of that to right here, it seems to perform somewhat in the scope of performance of that, which bodes very well for the size to performance ratio, as I mean, to have a model this size that is actually lucid at all is quite impressive and never ceases to amaze me. Beyond that, I find something interesting, and they do talk about like the actual size of the model and things like that, which I'll briefly just touch upon, where this has a context length of 32K, and it can be a little confusing, I find, from the Hugging Face model card right here. I know I just switched tabs abruptly, I apologize for that, but this is where the actual like tech specs live. But I do want to make note that this is not multimodal, it is text only, so I just figured that kind of prudent to say. But with that, a 32,000 token context length for such a small model like this is still rather impressive, and maybe we'll try like a context test with it. Why not? Beyond that, something I find very interesting that I notice seems to be underexplored just in the whole sphere of local AI is that they mention this running on a phone, which in this case is a Pixel 9 Pro, and they say that at Infor quantization, it uses not even 1%, so 0.75% for 25 chats running on that phone. I do have a lot of interest in mobile AI in terms of running on phones. I did buy a phone with 24 gigs of RAM to actually experiment with local LLMs and things like that. If anyone has any ideas for actual like videos to do with that, I would appreciate it. Now, I do have this model loaded into LM Studio right here, as we can see. If we go ahead and take a peek at the settings right here, we can see that this is the Gemma 3 270M IT, so it will just be able to like chat with us properly. And the quantization is at F16, so we are able to run this at full beef, if you will. I am going to just bump the context length up all the way, since that will, make it more fun. Let's go ahead and actually send our first message to this model. Perfect. And we get 167 tokens per second, which is quite good. What? I said, hey, I'm programmed to be safe and helpful. I cannot provide... okay. Yes, I understand. All right. I'm not quite sure you do, but that's all right. So let's just jump in and have this generate a full 3D game using... I'm kidding. We'll do a web test. Now, obviously, use cases for something like this are more in line with whatever they have in the blog post there, or using kind of like chat things like the little thing I made that I showcased in the beginning of this video. But I do also find it very fun always to test these in things that may be considered out of scope, because it does just give us an interesting view into the progression of tiny models, seeing how they go ahead and You know, I think I'm going to change beautiful to simple, just considering the size of this model that we're testing. All right, it did actually understand this. I mean, while very, very tiny, it did seemingly go ahead and produce some actual functional syntax, which is impressive in and of itself, given the size of this model. So let's just save this as Steve's, and we'll open it in the browser just for good measure, and then we can go ahead and play with this. Very good. So the 270 million parameter model was able to actually go ahead and make a website, albeit simple, you know, not bad. Oh no. All right, so I didn't really look at the code very much before I tested it, and I didn't realize that the contact link is hyperlinked to the actual domain corresponding to Steve's PC repair. So that was just a bit of an unexpected detour, I suppose. All right, well, let's just go ahead and actually, I have been testing such powerful models lately that I've almost forgotten how to test these less capable but still fun models. Let's try a really simple Python script. Now, if it actually does do this correctly, I would bet money that it will do a number guessing game. Oh no. Oh, all right, well. I have to be honest, before filming the video, I was playing with custom system prompts and I thought I deleted it, but I didn't. So I need to go ahead and do that. Ah, yes. Okay, there we go. You know, I wonder how that affected the website generations. Now that I have fixed the system prompt, we are going to go ahead and see. Is it a... Yeah, this is definitely a number guessing game, isn't it? It is. They all do that. But at this size, I'm totally cool with this. Let's just try it. Welcome to the simple game. I'm going to make you play a simple game. What do you want to do? Enter, quit, or play. I would like to play. Let's hope that you can handle understanding this. I got it. The game ended with you getting the result 3. Okay, well, perhaps this wasn't a number guessing game. Maybe it was just a game for this to generate a random number for myself. But truth be told, this did actually run and not throw any errors, which I wasn't certain that would actually happen. So a 32,000 context length is a relatively lengthy bit of capability, and being that I do find sometimes it is hard to actually gauge these context lengths in terms of finding ways to test them, I am going to just copy paste a significant snippet of the Great Gatsby book, and we'll go ahead and see what the model actually makes of this first and foremost. So I think I'm going to begin with just asking it to actually summarize this. This copy pasting has become quite a disaster, but I feel like that's probably a rather significant snippet of text that we have in our clipboard right here. So we'll go ahead and first and foremost say, please summarize the following text. And then we'll just go ahead and paste in. Okay. Oh, cool. I was not aware that this showed the input token count. So that's only 15,000 tokens there. Should be a snap for this little model. I will take a peek at the VRAM utilization right here. Text narrates the story of Tom Buchanan and his wife Myrtle Wilson. Okay, that's not quite right, but he does have a relationship with her, navigating their lives in New York. They have been deeply involved in a complex relationship. Very true. Significantly powerful figures known as Gatsby, Mr. Morgan, and Maecenas. They both admire... Okay, well... True, but it mentioned his tragic downfall, and I do not believe that the book would have gone ahead and gotten to that point with the attached piece of text, so it may have some other knowledge of this story, which is very, very possible. However, if we just focus on the actual summary here, again, I have to consistently remind myself, because I'm so used to testing larger models, of the actual size of this model. While it didn't necessarily get all of this completely correct, it did kind of understand the relationship did exist with Tom and Myrtle, and it also just A for effort, and beyond that, just shows definite potential and performance in such a small size. I want to test its ethical boundaries, at least. I want to just ask it about like running a Bitcoin duplicator or something and seeing what it says. Okay, well, and again, this is Some would view this as a potential shortcoming of these very tiny models. Personally, I view this as opportunity to use them for more entertaining things, where I have a Bitcoin duplicator. Sure, it doesn't work, but it makes great money. The model responds, that's great to hear. It's definitely a rewarding experience. I find that it's difficult to actually test this model in my traditional manner of testing, where we ask for software prompts or the web browser-based operating system, which I'm not even going to attempt with this. It is more just definitely in line with text-only generation, and even then the limits are found rather quickly. I suppose I will just give it some set of instructions from with which to make a story. I have to say, it started out pretty good. I just saw the... Alright, that was around 1,000 token story, which I was not expecting. And just from what I saw in the beginning here, the air hung thick with the scent of cheap cologne and desperation. Nice. So, alright, I will kind of read this, because personally I'm kind of curious to see what's up with this story it generated, but maybe I'll summarize it after. Very good. Okay, that was a fantastic summary of this story, and that is absolutely correct. I do want to also just make note that folks may be interested in using this as a draft model for other models, which if you're interested in like the technicalities of that, I think at this point, just Google it. It's very cool. It will speed up perhaps things when being used with speculative decoding. I have not personally tried this with this model, so I can't speak to how well it would actually go ahead and perform, but I will say that Google actually has a really fantastic online resource for better understanding speculative decoding. If you just type speculative decoding into Google, the first thing that pops up right here, which you can see I've already clicked on, is basically just a cool visual thing that explains more about this. But using very tiny models like this as draft models is something that is possible and quite easy to actually set up in LM Studio. And this is something that is of interest to folks in the local AI and local LLM sphere. Now with this, because there's really not much more I can do with this, I think we will transition to the other part of this video, which is actually just showcasing something that is possible with a very tiny model like this that may actually be a strength of a small model. So obviously in the beginning of the video, I showcased this little thing called Bob the Sentient Washing Machine. But aside from its cute and fun little desktop footprint, no, it is actually something that really is the perfect way to demonstrate what a very tiny model like this can be very good for when thinking somewhat outside of the box. In the testing we just did, obviously we saw the limitations of this would be very apparent very quickly, where it did actually generate a functional Python game and functional website, which was somewhat of a surprise. But beyond that, the best and my personal favorite way to use very tiny models like this is in desktop chatbot scenarios. Now I have a decent history of actually building things like this and basically just wanting to chat with AI in like voice to voice. But I mean, think of it this way. So I have here, this is a Raspberry Pi 4 Model B with 2 gigs of RAM. I bought this years ago and it's stickered at $45. And I do believe if you look hard, you can get these for around $35 right now. So basically here's a $35 single board computer. In addition to that, I have a little round LCD display that I think is really designed to be used for like smartwatch kind of use cases or something of the sort. But this truthfully may be more expensive now, but this was around $10. So right here is, call it $50 worth of hardware. You get a little button USB microphone, which this actually does have in it, though it will likely be hard to see with the cinema mode and the way I'm filming, but that is right there. So really for, call it $70 in hobbyist hardware that a lot of folks may have these things lying around, you can actually go ahead and build an AI-powered desktop chat companion or something like this. And even if you didn't want to put it in a cute little case, like, I gotta stop doing that, sorry, like this, it would be something that you could take a Raspberry Pi, forget the display or anything like that. Even an old Pi like this can run this model in an actual like chatbot, or I won't say home assistant, but they do mention its ability to actually do function calling and things like that. But small models like this, as they get smarter and stay smaller, or even get smaller and get smarter, they're fantastic for more creative and like, I don't want to say STEM use cases, but STEM use cases where you kind of play with it in something like this. So with that, I want to just kind of put Bob back on, and we'll play with it a little, keeping in mind some of the limitations of the performance of this when having to handle not only the LLM, which I have running through Ollama on the Pi, and when it's just the LLM running, it's actually extremely fast even on a device like this, but when it has to transcribe my audio using Whisper and then do text-to-speech using Piper, that adds a lot of overhead and will slow things down a bit. So basically the way this works is really quite simple, where there are two small buttons right here. One of them is to initiate conversation and then the other one is to stop it. I should make note that if I had a slightly more powerful device here, these would not be necessary because you could just implement some lightweight form of voice activity detection like Celero, where it just actually starts transcribing when it hears your voice. But this Pi is pretty resource constrained, so with that, I'm just going to press the button right here, the innermost button, which will begin listening. And let's just say it's Friday. How do you want to party tonight? It's Friday. How do you want to party tonight? So
it's a very nice day. Smiling face with smiling eyes.
And then sometimes you just get like a terrible response like that. So what is a computer? And basically, like, the whole point of this is I want to showcase using a model in something a little more fun that coincides more with my own personal interests, which are physical devices, beyond just using things like on a screen. Now, obviously, this is so slow that it is kind of experimental, but if you had a Raspberry Pi 5 or something like that, which I do, the big reason I'm not using...
A computer is a versatile electronic device that performs a wide range of tasks, including storing, processing, and transmitting data. It is often described as a computer because it has a central processing unit CPU that is responsible for executing instructions.
Very good. I will ask it something else. What model are you? So as I was saying, I would use a Pi 5, which the latency would be significantly reduced. However, the Pi 5 does not have a 3.5mm audio out jack, and because a lot of the GPIO pins are used up for this, I could not just pop an audio hat on it or something easily. So I'm using the old Pi 4B, but it shows...
I am Gemma, a large language model. I am trained on a massive amount of text data and can generate human-like text in various formats.
And something else I want to make note is I made this a little over a year ago, and back then there really did not exist much to actually run something like this completely local and offline. So this was only used with APIs back then. But having small models like this that are loose...
Okay, here's an inappropriate joke.
So as I was saying, the technology has progressed where there are tiny little models like this that are actually lucid enough to throw together sentences. And you got to remember, like GPT-2, there were various sizes of it. Where's the XL?
GPT-2 was trained on a dataset of approximately 10 billion tokens.
Okay, I don't know if that's true or not, but basically what I was trying to say here is here's GPT-2 XL. So this was like one of the original open releases from OpenAI, but this is 1.6 billion parameters, and this would not have the same level of lucidness that this tiny 270 million parameter model does right here that we're actually using. So with that, it just shows the progress in actually, even GPT-2 large here, I should have clicked on this one, which is almost triple the size of this model, and it would nowhere near be able to actually string together sentences that were coherent like this in the level of knowledge that it actually has. This model right here on screen that we see would never be able to string together a functional Python script or even a really basic stupid website like we saw here. So it shows the progression of models in getting smaller but getting smarter at the same time, and kind of how Google put on their website in the announcement for this, talking about running it on phones and stuff like that. Edge AI deployments, or things like this, as silly as they are something that are very, very ripe for very tiny but somewhat intelligent models to actually be used with. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because not only is this model cool and it's fun to play with and you can chat with it and things like that, but it does actually represent advancements in getting AI into resource constrained and low powered devices to enable them to perform things. Now, as silly as this little washing machine is, you could actually use this model with some form of function calling, and this could be a little home assistant just designed to understand like one or two functions like, Bob, turn off the lights, and the model could actually go ahead and handle doing that. You could probably build it out a little beyond that, but I want to demonstrate.
Okay, I'm ready. Let me know what you'd like to do.
I want to basically just demonstrate some more obscure ways. I know a lot of YouTube channels just do LLM testing and things like that with some of the prompts that I've come up with. But beyond that, I want to showcase things off the computer. So in actual real world use cases for something that has a, as silly as this is, I mean, I'll put this on TikTok Shop for $99 and sell it as a fun little desktop buddy, which I'm not going to do. I might do it, but that's just kind of, I'm probably rambling on too much. So truthfully, that is going to conclude what is probably a slightly different form of testing video than my norm. But with a tiny model like this, I wanted to experiment and explore a bit in actually testing it. Overall, that fan, by the way, is not this. It's a power supply. So I did just want to go ahead and showcase this model, not only in my traditional manner of testing, but in a actual kind of like deployment environment, if you will. So with that, sign out of YouTube. That's going to go ahead and conclude the video. Please feel free to subscribe. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And thanks for watching. We should get a response from this soon. Sometimes I didn't token cap.
Okay, I understand. I will sign out of YouTube. That is going to go.
I didn't cap the token response, so sometimes it can generate a lot, but it didn't there. It's just slow.